Good evening, everyone. We have continuing coverage on a plane crash in Midland. As News West 9 first reported, the plane went down just after 4 this afternoon. Let's take a look at a map where the plane crashed. It's on Garfield Street in Whitmire. We're told it was at Midland College twin-engine plane that was flown by 2 flight instructors. Both of them made it out safely, and they did not have to go to the hospital. Now, here's some pictures of the crash from our Facebook friends and News West 9 photographers at the scene. We're told they were coming into Midland Airport from Oklahoma City and actually missed the runway. The plane actually crashed on Whitmire Street, right by the fountains at Waterford Apartments. As you can see, it's actually on the street. We're told it did not hit any buildings or cars. Again, no one was hurt on the plane or on the ground. Now, Anayeli Ruiz joins us live from the scene of the plane crash with the very latest. Anayeli.
Well, Crystal, I'm in the 2400 block of Whitmire where a small plane crashed at around 4:05. Now, we're told this plane was coming from Oklahoma City and it was going to land here at the Midland Air Park. Now, 2 people were on the plane. It was 2 Midland College faculty members. They were on the plane. It was a twin-engine Beech aircraft. Now, DPS is in charge of the scene. NTSB is investigating. Now, the 2 members, the 2 people on the plane are okay and were reported with no injuries and were not transported. Now, joining me here today to talk a little bit about this so she can explain what happened here is Midland PIO Rebecca Bell. Thank you so much for joining us, Rebecca. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened here?
The pilots actually lost power in the plane. They were both very experienced pilots. They were looking for a place to land. Whitmire had no vehicles on it at the time. There were no pedestrians on it, so they chose to land here, and this is where the plane crashed. Both pilots are okay. They're both members of Midland College faculty, and there were no one on the ground was hurt either.
Now, we're told that it hit a pole behind us.
It's correct. It hit a pole. That's just where it crashed into, and so the plane is essentially lost, but both pilots were able to make it out okay.
Now, again, to reassure people, they're experienced pilots, right?
They're both very experienced pilots. They're both members of our faculty. They teach flying, and they were the only people that were on board. There were no students on board at this time.
Now, is there any potential dangers for people who live in this area?
No, there is no potential danger whatsoever. The NTSB is they're on the way here. We just ask that people not come out and interfere with the investigation that is going on.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Rebecca. And of course, we will continue to follow this and bring you any new developments here on News West 9. Live in Midland, Anayeli Ruiz, News West 9.
Live in HD from the station that brings you more West Texas news. News West 9 at 6 starts now.
You know, they expect you to just go live in this place as if nothing ever happened, basically. I mean, you wouldn't let an animal walk. You wouldn't even let an animal stay in there, live in there.
Anger and frustration, that's what some Midland apartment dwellers are feeling after their complex caught fire last week.
They claim the management is now telling them to move back in even if the damage hasn't been fixed. Anayeli Ruiz met up with residents and management. She has the details new at 6. Anayeli.
Well, David and Crystal, a fire broke out on Monday last week at the Renaissance apartment complex on Midland Drive in Neely. But now, 1 week later, tenants are angry with the apartment complex because they're asking them to move back in, and the fire damage hasn't been fixed.
It's just like if there was a fresh fire here. I mean, it smells of fire in there.
After just a few months in his new apartment, Roger Kashak is already looking for a new place to call home.
Yeah, well, they told me that they had no apartments available. They have no one-bedroom apartments. So.
Well, the fire started in the patio right behind this board, and the apartment complex has told Roger that he can still live here.
That I could just throw a mattress in that bedroom right in there where that window's missing, and I could just live in there for now. The way it is right here, like this.
But he's not the only one having trouble with the apartments. This single mother of 4 lives next door upstairs. She has smoke damage. Her door was knocked out by fire officials, and she still has no lock. And she also has a big hole in her roof.
Said that they wasn't going to move me to another apartment because nothing is wrong with my apartment.
But Jones and her daughters have nowhere else to go, so they have to stay in the apartment. I asked the apartment complex manager why they didn't provide the tenants with new apartments or a hotel room.
I guess he can go and get a motel. That's all I can tell him.
And you guys can't put him up for a motel?
I don't have the money to go and do something like that. I don't.
When I asked to speak to the owner, and before I could even get any more questions in, the door was shut in my face. And what about the other neighbor?
Please get my face in there. Don't do that.
What about the other
Let me
neighbor?
shut the door, please.
And the tenants don't feel like they're asking for too much.
Or I want them to get me a place to stay.
I'm scared. Like, I don't want to be here. I don't feel like that they've treated us like they're supposed to. I've never lived at an apartment complex that their manager or the owner doesn't, you know, want to help out their residents. Well, since then, I've spoken to the owner of the apartments. First, he told Mr. Kashak he could move in. The damage wasn't bad. But then he told me he was willing to work it out with him to put him in another apartment or a hotel. Now, he says he was never aware of the damage to the Jones apartments, but he claims she owes too much rent, so he isn't willing to work it out with her. Now, I also spoke with building officials. They tell me they have not authorized for anyone to move back into the burned property. They haven't been called for an inspection. In the studio, Anayeli Ruiz, News West 9.
Live in HD from the station that brings you more West Texas news. News West 9 at 6 starts now.
Well, imagine trying to get a hotel room but being denied just because you had a medical procedure done.
Well, that's what one West Texas veteran claims happened to him. Now he's speaking out. Anayeli Ruiz investigates.
I felt like it kicked me in the teeth because I felt like I deserved better than that.
54-year-old Alvy Smith is a Vietnam-era vet, and he was in the Army and Reserves for 20 years. Last Friday, he went for an eye exam and a checkup at the VA hospital in Big Spring. He ended up having a medical procedure done the same day.
And they did a procedure on me that hurt me real bad, and so I couldn't get back to Odessa at the time because I was hurting so bad.
That same day, Alvy Smith's friend tried to get him and his wife a room at a local motel so he could rest from all the pain. So they came here to the Budget Inn and Suites.
Well, our friend went in first, and I said to my husband Alvy, I said, I better go ahead and go on in case they need some kind of ID.
But when Alvy's wife went inside, she was surprised at what she heard next. The motel had refused them service.
That he couldn't rent a room. And Sam was kind of confused. Why not? And he says, I don't rent to sick people.
He said, well, he's not sick. He just had a procedure done. And he said, I don't care. I don't want no sick people in here.
They left in shock and in disbelief that they were denied a room.
And I just wanted to lay down. Wasn't going to cause no problems. And I wasn't sick. I just needed to lay down. And he still refused us.
Alvy, his wife, and his friend got a room at the Hampton Inn down the road. And even though it worked out for them, they were left with a bitter feeling.
I couldn't believe the way we were being treated.
I felt really down and really low and really betrayed.
Well, we tried talking to the Budget Inn here in Big Spring. They would not comment on camera, but they did tell me they didn't know Mr. Smith's situation. They also said that they've had bad experiences in the past, and that's why they don't rent to sick people who can't take care of themselves. In Big Spring, Anayeli Ruiz, News West 9.
From our water supply to crops, a severe drought is taking a toll everywhere, especially when it comes to wild animals. Mothers are actually abandoning their babies because they can't feed them and they can't get them water.
Well, you know, some of those animals are actually popping up in people's backyards, and vets say that's more common than ever. Anayeli Ruiz spoke to one woman who had an unexpected visitor.
Ashley Rice's son was out playing when he and his friend found this little guy under a tree. They left him alone hoping the mother would get it, but she never came.
This terrible noise, it was just an agony, and I didn't know what it was. It kind of looked like a puppy is what it looked like. We get in the car and rush to the vet because I think this thing is dying, and when we get there, they're like, oh, it's a baby squirrel.
The veterinarians told Ashley this is becoming more and more common. Animals are abandoning their young because of lack of food.
So that broke my heart because I just can't imagine leaving, no matter what you are, having to leave your baby. So they said the drought's definitely our problem.
Moms and dads don't have anything to eat to feed their babies. They're more likely to remove them from the nest or abandon the nest. And I would say, yes, we're definitely seeing quite a bit more of that.
The vets at A to Z Veterinarian are seeing more and more newborn animals being brought into their clinics. They say anything from possums, raccoons, and birds are ending up near people's homes. And this year, because of the drought, they've seen an increase of 75% more animals.
No water, no food for them to eat, so they're trying to just, in my opinion, migrate to find something, and they're not having much more success.
So what can you do if you find a wild animal in your backyard?
I recommend that a lot of people think finding these little babies, whether it's a bobcat baby or a baby squirrel, think it's great, and I commend anybody that tries to save them. However, they do not make good pets, and I recommend finding a wildlife rehabilitator who can adequately provide the correct nutrition and rehabilitate them to release them.
Former Midland vet employee is taking care of the baby squirrel and is also trying to help it survive. Now, the vets also told us that if you want to help these animals, you could put out some water and seeds to help with food. This will help some of the squirrels and the birds. In the studio, Anayeli Ruiz, News West 9.